Welcome back to another episode, another week of the podcast. This episode is, I honestly hesitated and press and record on this episode because this is going to be a vulnerable one. I'm going to say that straight away. And I guess I should give some sort of trigger warning just because this is dealing with abuse in relationships. And so if you have any sort of trauma around that, just know that it will be discussed during this episode because what I really want to talk about is dating and healing after trauma because it is really hard. It really is, especially when we have let me back up and start. I want to give two definitions here just to set the stage of when I use terms, what it means to me, what my definitions are, because I think that's important to just frame the entire episode. So trauma, I heard this definition recently and I love it. It is so powerful and it resonates really strongly with me. Trauma is everything that happened that shouldn't have happened. And trauma is also everything that didn't happen to you that should have happened. So trauma is not only, the physical abuse or the emotional abuse or, the things that were done onto you and made you to feel a certain way. It's also the neglect, right? It's also the things that didn't happen. It's also those core needs that you have that were not met. And the second definition I want to give is shame, because we have guilt. We know what guilt is. It's fairly easy for most of us to define guilt, right? It is a feeling that we did something wrong and we want to correct that wrong thing, right? It is a guilty feeling over something that we have done to someone else that has caused them maybe some pain. Shame is different in that it is the feeling that I am wrong. It's not that I did something wrong, it's that I am wrong. And we can have shame and we can have toxic shame. And toxic shame is when this has happened over a prolonged period of time. And so then, whether it's in childhood, you were constantly shamed, in a moment, maybe you think, oh, I'm wrong for doing this. And then you kind of maybe work through it. But when you have that built up on top of each other, then maybe as an adult, you come to this space where you just feel like you innately are wrong. As a human being, you are wrong. And so that is something that I struggled with when I first started going to therapy. That was the definition my therapist gave me. And one of the first things I also learned was that there is no quote unquote wrong emotion, right? We have 5 core emotions. Those are fear, love, envy, grief, and guilt. I believe those are the 5 core emotions, and everything kind of comes from those. Everything kind of spawns out or branches out from those. But just to kind of give a background to why this specific episode is really important for me and my experiences, I have been in 2 abusive relationships in my life. And I think a lot of us hesitate in using the word abuse because we weren't maybe physically abused. And as I said before, trauma is all the things that happened to us that shouldn't have, and all the things that didn't happen to us that should have. The very first time I experienced it, it was physical, it was emotional, mental, all the things. And I even, when I'm about to say, but there is no but about it, right? I've learned that it is. And for a long time after that relationship, so it was abusive in the sense that, I was, maybe my leg was hit or punched, and it wasn't like a full on, like really hard punch, right? But it to the point where like it left a bruise. I was pushed, my hair was pulled, um, just called names, told things, gaslit. It was kind of like the full spectrum. But right, that we always apply to things. We want to like minimize our experiences. It wasn't. It wasn't like I was constantly beat, right? And so I think for a long time, I never really talked about it to anybody. I never went to therapy about it. I just kind of brushed it off after I got out of that relationship. I quote unquote moved on. I don't even remember really telling anybody that I had been in an abusive relationship. I don't remember even the first time I really kind of used that term. Um, I then found myself in my second serious relationship, I guess, wasn't physically abusive at all. It was more neglectful. So I wouldn't consider that one to be abusive. I think we probably should have just been friends, but things happened and and it led to a relationship. Then I found myself in another one that was 90%, I will say, emotionally and mentally abusive. And because I had had that first experience in a relationship where I was physically touched, I wrote it off as not being abusive, because I wasn't being touched until the one time that it did happen. And that being gaslit, because I had already built up this sort of like toxic shame about like who I was. And now that I'm on this path of healing, I can look back and see my patterns. I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think that I was worth anything more. And somebody was giving me attention, right? And the people pleaser in me. I just remember being in that relationship and so much, I had no voice. There were so many things that I wanted to say, and I had no voice. I physically could not speak it. My throat would hurt so bad. I wanted to express myself, but I never felt safe to be able to do that. And I started getting scared of myself. Like I would get yelled at, or we would get in a fight, air quote fight, because I didn't really say much. I just kind of sat and listened to the other person yelling at me and calling me names and gaslighting me and making me feel like I was crazy. And I remember I was in the bathroom. So of course, like during this relationship too, I was drinking a lot just to kind of like, I guess, numb myself out. And I remember I was in the bathroom one time and I was so angry. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I had just bought this like Chi flat iron and I just threw it across the room. And of course, like shattered, broken like multiple pieces. And I just like that feeling of being out of control. I noticed that happening more and more in that specific relationship because it was like every time I wanted to say something, it didn't. It like weighed on my chest. Every single time it like built and built and built and built. And so yeah, I learned through these relationships that I had been in that it wasn't safe to trust. It wasn't safe to express. It wasn't even safe to be who I was. Because every time that I did something that I wanted to do, every time I embodied my higher self or came back to who I was shamed for it, right? It was like, why would you do that? That's stupid. Or, just all these little things that to keep me small, to keep me like under their thumb, sort of, right? Because that's the pattern, is that there's so much insecurity from the other person, whether it's narcissism, insecurities, that we know we project outwards, right? So now in hindsight, I forgive those that did those things to me. I forgive them because I see how much pain they truly were in. Now, that's not to excuse bad behavior. And if you're in a relationship, and if you're in an abusive relationship, you're in a relationship with a narcissist, I'm not saying forgive and just keep working on it. But understanding that the level of pain that person is actually feeling is really high, right? To be able to, if you are treating another individual that way, if you're using words like that to another individual, imagine what you are using with yourself, right? Imagine how you're treating yourself inside, how you feel inside. So that has given me the ability to forgive. Now I forgive and don't allow these people back into my life, but I can forgive and move on. But when I went to therapy after that second relationship, it was kind of like, I think I just saw something recently on To Be Magnetic on Instagram. And it was like something about like healing. We always get to this level of healing when we're like kind of tired of our own shit. And I got to that point after that relationship. I was like, I cannot operate like this anymore. I cannot be this person anymore. It was not who I was in so many ways. I was so unhappy. Every thought was of like, I was doing wrong, how I'll never succeed in life, how I'm going nowhere, how I just bounce from job to job. Like everything in my life was just a negative. I was playing the victim. Completely honestly, I was playing the victim. I was a victim of my own life and I had no control over it. I felt, right? And so I started doing this work, and for 2.5 years after that relationship, did nothing. I didn't date. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't have sex. I didn't like nothing with nothing. I wasn't looking for a partner. I was so afraid of myself and I was so afraid of other people, but I was doing the work, right? I was journaling. I was meditating, I was making connections, I was going to therapy, moving my body. That's when I really started getting into fitness. It actually started before that relationship ended. I started getting into fitness because it was a way to like get out of my home. And I honestly can attribute like fitness to kind of like saving me in that space, because I started getting a little bit of confidence, right? I would go to the gym and I would feel better. I would physically feel more present in my body. I would feel better. And it allowed me to see my situation for what it was. But when I started going to therapy, I was so terrified of getting into a relationship. I didn't want to date. I didn't want any of that. And my therapist said, Rochelle, your relationship was broken. Your trust was broken in relationships. And you can do all of the work that you want on yourself, but it's in relationship that you are going to rebuild that trust. We are, as humans, we want relationships. We want connection. We crave it. We need it, right? It is just like a part of who we are. And so to build that trust back up, to know takes a relationship with another person, right? It takes another person reflecting you back to yourself. Now, I think the very first step for me, at least, was really getting to know myself, right? So I spent those 2.5 years, again, journaling, meditating, talking to people, joining programs, building my intuition, going to school for holistic health and gut health, like really doing a lot of deep diving on myself. I spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time alone. I mean, I would go to movies like almost every weekend by myself, but like by myself, right? I would take myself out. If I felt lonely, I would do the thing that I wanted. I learned to do the thing that I wanted to do. I had a job that I was happy with, and we had, work engagements and work trips. This was when I was working in corporate. And so it was good. I was good. And then I was at my best friend's wedding, like the movie, but literally I was at my best friend's wedding. And of course, many, many drinks later, I had this moment where I was sitting there just watching all of the couples around me. And I felt this intense level of loneliness. It was kind of like, what was it all for? Right? Like all of the work I had done on myself. And I felt in that moment that nobody wanted me. So when I came back after that wedding, I started getting on dating apps. I wrote a manifestation list. I wrote my list before I engaged in anything. I wrote a list of the qualities I wanted in a partner that I was seeking in somebody else. And I met somebody. We had a great first date. Again, hadn't had sex in 2.5 years, and I did the thing I don't normally do. I took someone home on the very first date, and I spent literally pretty much 2 years after that in deep, like, I don't want to say pain, but deep reflection. It was really painful because all of those things that I kind of avoided, right? It was like, again, I had done the work on myself, but sometimes without that relationship, without that mirror to reflect back to you your wounds, you can only do so much work by yourself. And so when I started that with that person, who I'm going to get into attachment styles in a minute, but absolutely was a dismissive avoidant, and I'm a fearful avoidant. So they never wanted to get that close. It was always me like overthinking things and never really feeling like I got a response. And a lot of this person wasn't they were a dismissive avoidant, so they weren't secure, but there was no, like, I never felt like I was manipulated. I will say they were a safe person for me to do the work that I had to do in that moment with. I felt like there were times where, not that I was invalidated, but I feel like that person never really owned up to their part of things sometimes. But a lot of deep pain came up, a lot of my core wounds of being unloved, of being unworthy, of rejection, of abandonment, because I never fully got what I felt like I needed. And I never expressed that in the beginning. I didn't feel safe to express that. Right. And then also, being a fearful avoidant and having been through the trauma that I had been through, I was really hyper vigilant, right? Hyper aware of like subtle cues or subtle changes in the person's expression or the way they communicated, even if it was like via text, right? If there was like a text that either took too long, which of course is like we all want to think that everything's always about us, but people have lives, right? Like, let's be honest. But yeah, I would just notice like all the little subtle things and question it and make it mean something about me instead of giving that person grace that, you know, they have a busy life or whatever. And yeah, a lot of the beginning of that relationship was just a lot. It was a lot of my wounding coming up, being like, I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. What's wrong with me? What do I have to change? And so I noticed like a couple times where I would fall into that like people pleasing thing, fall into that like, how can I be the person that I think they want me to be so that they will love me or they will see me or they will accept me? And the reoccurring theme that like during conversations with this specific individual, they would always say like, I don't feel like you're being yourself. I don't feel like you're being yourself. And I truly believe that we are given exactly what we need when we need it. Because if this person had like in like the first couple of months been like, yeah, let's have a relationship, let's commit, let's be exclusive, all those things, like would I actually have learned any of those lessons? I probably would have like over time because it wouldn't have worked out. But I feel like the chasing aspect of that whole thing really taught me a huge lesson. I wasn't myself. I was never myself. I always felt super like my nervous system was always activated, which to me felt kind of safe, right? Because that's what I was used to in relationships. That's what made me has in the past made me feel like I was worthy of something, but it was confusing because I was constantly in this chaos. My nervous system was constantly activated. But then there was this so much of this space, right? There wasn't the normal um maybe in the past relationships it was more like other was leaning more towards like anxious attachment or whatever it may be, but there was just so much space. There was never like a conversation. There was never I never felt like I could actually express myself in that way. And so I I in hindsight now I can see what a blessing that it was a relationship of whatever sort, friendship, relationship, situationship, but relationship it was. Um just not in that romantic sense that I had hoped it would be, but to be able to so during like the last half of that, I really started to reflect and take the things that were happening and really reflect on what it was saying about me, not like what you said has to, like not like being the victim, but I was really starting to notice what was coming up and why. I was questioning the stories that I was telling myself. I was also really attracted to this person. So then, of course, that like jealous envy part of me didn't want anyone else to have them, even though I knew it wasn't an exclusive relationship, which was also hard because then it was like I wanted that person all to myself. And that's the ego, right? That's the ego that's like that possession, that is so much that attachment, right? We want to practice non-attachment in relationships, and if you listen to the last relationship with Jamie, we talked about that. It's like let other versions exist, right? Like just let the person be as they are, let me be as I am. And um you might be upset if something ends, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the world, and we can all just exist as we are. So yeah, like really, really questioning what I was telling myself, really questioning the stories. I have journals upon journals upon journals, and I guarantee like every single one of them every week was like ruminating over the same situation over and over and over. Like it was like an obsession in my mind. And I didn't like that. I didn't like feeling like that because I'm a 6'3" in human design, which is a lot about freedom, right? Independence, freedom, things like that. It's for the other, but we have to have this sense of uniqueness within the whole, right? And then as a fearful avoidant, it's so important to me to have freedom. But it's this place where there's this fine line for the fearful avoidant that we want to like kind of our relationships kind of need to end up in for us to feel safe and comfortable. And it's somewhere between anxious and dismissive, right? It's somewhere between we can't that anxiously attached person is like too much, freaks us out. And then the overly dismissive person just makes us feel then anxious, right? So it's this middle line where we need the freedom, which and I think there is a beautiful dance between the dismissive avoidant and the fearful avoidant, because I think the fearful avoidant expressing our needs is very important. And I'm deep diving into personal development school. But that expressing ourselves is really important for the fearful avoidant. And it kind of allows the dismissive avoidant to maybe express themselves a little bit more or be a little bit more vulnerable than they're used to being. But the dismissive avoidant in itself allows the fearful avoidant to have a certain amount of freedom that it's always craving, right? So it's like finding that middle line between them. But through that whole time, it truly allowed me to like really get to know myself. And in that process, really like love myself and give myself what I need. Because there were times where I would be, and I talked about it on a previous podcast episode, and I laughed, but like it really hurt in the moment. But I would like hope that this person would ask me to do something, and I would like clear off my whole schedule. And like for the weekend, I would hire a babysitter. Like I don't know what I thought what that was going to do. Like they're going to read my mind, or be like, I should have just been like, hey, I have Saturday night free, want to do something. But I was like, also the ego in me is like, I didn't want to like always be the one to ask to do things. But like in those moments when I wouldn't get the invitation I wanted, I would just like, I had the sitter already, I had everything set up. So I would just like go and take myself out and, have a nice meal, have a drink, have a glass of wine, go to a movie, like whatever it is that I really wanted to do, to like give that to myself. And that was so powerful and healing for me to know that I don't actually need somebody else to give me what I think I need from them. Right. It's being able to give it to myself. And so it's been a whole process. And then, within that, I think some really important things as you're like healing and as you're actively dating, is like really understanding your core wounds, right? Your core beliefs about you, about relationships, and being able to identify when they present themselves. Like now, I had a moment where I felt rejected by somebody. And, I was like, oh, do I express it to them? Like, am I being overly dramatic? But self expression is really important for the fearful avoidant. And so I sat with it, I meditated with it, and I had the awareness to understand what was happening, right? I felt in this specific situation, there was somebody that I was dating that we did not get intimate with in this one specific instance, and I felt rejected. And I really realized that sex for me, a lot of times, is false intimacy in a sense, right? Because it is a space where I can be vulnerable to a certain extent. It's vulnerability without the emotional vulnerability, right? Because it is a very vulnerable setting, right? Like it's a very vulnerable act. So it makes me feel close to somebody, makes me feel important, makes me feel seen, it makes me feel wanted. And so understanding that in that moment when that person did not initiate that and we did not go there, I felt really rejected because I was like, wow, what's wrong with me? Like, why wouldn't you want me? Like, because I was creating this false sense of intimacy. So it was like, I could have just looked at the evening as an intimate evening where we had conversation. It was really great. But instead, because it didn't end in that way, where I felt like I've attached so much intimacy with that I was being rejected or I was being unwanted or I was being unworthy. And so after I went through the cycle with myself, I then reached out to the person and was like, hey, I know that's probably not how you meant it. I know that like this may be me, but this is what I am feeling right now. I'm feeling really rejected. And can we have a conversation about that? And it was honored and we had the conversation and it was great. But like understanding, right? Like your core beliefs and your core wounds is really helpful in those situations. And it makes it easier to be able to then articulate and express to another person what is happening. Because a lot of times, like, as a fearful avoidant or anybody, like we project, we can be like a little bit intense and walk around and just like, and for somebody being in the energy of that or receiving that, it can be a little bit confusing. So yeah, understanding those and then making a list, like I said in the beginning, before I started dating. And then I've reassessed my list because the person that I talked about before, I realized that they did check off a lot of boxes on my list, but then it also made me realize what was not on my list that was actually really important to me. And so I revisited my list. I think I do it like once a year now. And so then when I meet people, if they don't check those boxes, then I know like okay, maybe this one isn't one. And then also being able to kind of look at it and be like, okay, what things are on this list that I put on there that are maybe superficial or maybe aren't necessarily deal breakers, and working from there. But once I finally let go of that one situation, and I will say, like, I still have deep feelings somewhere in there over that situation, that it is what it is. I truly believe I absolutely want nothing but happiness for that person. But there are days where I'm still kind of like, oh, kind of a bummer, like still got some sensitivity there. But so I did start like actively dating after that. And it was really empowering in the beginning because I was like, kind of like, ooh, I'm like dating like 4 people right now. I'll talk to people at work sometimes like, well, which one is this? And I'm like, oh yeah. It's just kind of like like I said, it kind of feels empowering, but it also allows me to not get too emotionally invested in one person, because I've noticed in my own process, this is what I need. It allows me to see it from a different perspective. It allows me to like lean into who I am. It allows me to show up as I am. And it just allows me to be more authentic, because I've noticed that like when I do get feelings for somebody, that sort of like chaos thing kind of comes up, where I'm like, oh my gosh, where I take things personally. And the 4 agreements: take nothing personally, assume nothing, do the best that you can, and be impeccable with your words. I literally every single day, it's a reminder on my phone. I get it at night, I look at it, and I always remember that in any situation. Um, but yeah, it's like it allows me to like take that step back. And I can't remember where I heard it. Somebody like just I heard it the other day, but it's like you literally will go through like on 8 dates before you find like one person that is actually you would consider to be someone you would move something forward with. And so, yeah, there have been some some bad first dates. There have been some conversations that never even went to dates, but it's just like it's been really interesting because I never actually dated in my 20s, right? I went from that one very first relationship. There was like a couple of people in there, but I didn't really date any of them. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't even know what they were. To then my marriage. And then right after my marriage, I was from 20 to 28. I got divorced and I fell into another relationship, and then that ended. And so now this is like the first time in my life where I'm like actually like dating, where I'm actually like actively talking to people and getting to know people. And it's been like a really great practice. Actually, the podcast was probably great practice to like asking really good questions and like asking the hard questions and getting to know people. And I think also because there have been like not just like one specific person I'm like dating, because it has that like emotional, I'm not like not overly invested in one specific person, that like as I'm dating these people, it's been really cool to like see myself just be honest and express what I'm feeling, and be like, hey, this is kind of what I need. If you can't meet that like that's fine. There was one person that I was talking to that I really felt like had potential. And then like maybe I got a little crazy, because I think I did get and I say crazy, just like I just had that like I realized that I had feelings for this person. And so then I kind of like I kind of like dropped everybody else out. And then I got a little anxious, like that more anxious side of the fearful avoidant. And then just communication completely stopped, which is obviously for the best. And I always look at those moments and I'm like, if somebody can't accept me for who I am in all that I am, then in all of my expressions, and even if it's like even if you express something and it seems outrageous to you, or you're concerned about what somebody's going to think, or even if that person is like, whoa, like she's crazy, like fuck them, right? Because you're just being genuine to yourself, you're being honest to yourself. And that's where I think like all these tools, right? Like the anxious, like the attachment styles was so helpful. And I'm going to link down the episode with Sarah Cohen where she went over the attachment styles, because that is such a powerful tool for me in my journey to understand people and have compassion for people and understand myself and my own patterns in relationships. Like we're all always working towards the secure attachment. And it's interesting when you have an insecure attachment style, the secure attachment almost feels, and I've heard Sarah talk about this in her podcast, the Lydia F podcast, but she's like, secure people are boring, right? Because like we just have like a lot of intensity and a lot of passion and a lot of all that stuff. And it's kind of amazing when you meet a secure person, when you come from an insecure attachment style, because it's like when somebody actually listens to you and responds and validates you, and not that you need validation, but like validates and doesn't try and like gaslight you and make you feel like you're wrong. You're just like, what is this? This is really weird, but also really empowering that, wow, I can actually use my voice. Now, granted, they will set boundaries too, which when they do set boundaries, it can feel really cold because for us, that's a rejection. So being able to say, like, hey, I know you're setting a boundary right now and I respect that, but it also it hurts, right? And because of my past experiences, and let them know like it's not, you're not like blaming them or whatever. But but yeah, so communication has been a huge one that I'm working on because I just felt like I never had a voice, like I said, and I never really communicated myself. And so I would say since May, I've been like more actively dating and I've been more actively noticing my patterns and I have been more actively taking care of my body. I've not been drinking that much, which is kind of hard when you're dating because everybody's like, let's go for a drink, let's grab a drink. And then it's like, so what, you go out and get drunk and then I don't know, it's just like weird. Which I used to do all the time. And of course, like going out and having a drink, like kind of calms you down, right? It's like calms you down, allows you to like talk more. But yeah, I don't know. I think because it's also really important because it's something that I'm leaving in the past. I'm working to move out of. Like the last like 2 weeks, I had a one glass of wine last night and I had a dessert, which is so I'm trying to do like more like the 80-20, but I'm cut out processed food, cut out like added sugars, cut out alcohol. I'm still drinking coffee. Probably could cut that out, but I like coffee. I love the smell of coffee. I love the ritual of coffee. I just love everything about coffee. So have not yet cut out coffee, but just like in taking care of my body and being able to tap into myself and like come back to myself more and more, it allows me to see, it really has allowed me to see red flags, like for sure. Like, because I will say since May, I went through a really deep, like, I don't know if it was like magic dark or night of the soul or whatever you want to call it. I think that's what it's called, night of the soul or something. But like May was a really, really intense month for me. Um, but it also allowed me to really, really tap into my body. Right. So now I know that if I'm dating somebody and something just doesn't feel right, I'm trusting that. I'm trusting that. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where maybe like 3 months down the road, now it's like presenting itself. Like I am just fully trusting myself in what's coming up and what I'm feeling. And it's been like game changing. Um, so if you are dating and healing after trauma, if any of this resonates with you, really get to know yourself, really get to a space where you can trust yourself. Because as you're dating and as you are constantly having all of these woundings and triggers reflected back to you, because that's what it is, you have the tools to not react in the moment and to be able to reflect and ask yourself, what is it showing? Where do I still need to heal? What do I need to work on within myself? What do I need to express? Is this person safe to move through this with, right? Can I don't know, can I express something that I never really have in the past? Can I make that one? Because we know, like, in order to change, like, yes, we have to do the work. We have to always be doing the work, but we also have to be taking action. It's so important. And dating is just a great place. Like, again, when your trust was broken in relationships, building that back up in relationships, right? Being able to have this space, being able to have the tools to self regulate, being able to have the tools to reflect and come back to yourself and trust yourself, and then be able to articulate to another human being, right? Especially if communication was your thing or if you always felt unsafe to use your voice. Like, I don't even care whether I used to shame myself for like sending a text and communicating that way. But at the time, like that's what felt safe for me. But at least I was doing it. And I was doing it in a way that wasn't victimy and I wasn't projecting out. I would be like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm feeling. And even more further now, I have even more tools to like wordings, right? To kind of like have that like open communication, but seek guidance, right? Seek a therapist, seek a coach, seek somebody who can support you and guide you in that journey. because it is not easy, right? It's not always going to be easy, but keep doing it. And I truly like, I look at it. It's like if you're looking for a job, right? And you apply to a whole bunch of places, viewing the interviews that you get, whether you actually want that job or not, right? But viewing those interviews as practice, it's the same thing. Like going on a date here or like having a conversation with you or getting on a phone call here. It was kind of funny. The first time like somebody FaceTimed me or like wanted to talk on the phone, I was just like, oh my gosh, what are we, 12? Right. But like also it was kind of nice. It was like good practice, right? Getting back into that was good practice. And so view it as practice, right? And even if that means like you just start with like, for like texting or FaceTiming or getting on phone calls before you meet that person. Like there are so many people who you'll, let's say it's from a dating app, like you'll match and it's like, what are you doing tonight? Let's go grab a drink. And for me personally, like I want to I want to know that I'm in, because for me, it's not just like a personal investment. Like it's not like I'm just showing up. Like I have to get a babysitter. I have to make sure I have time to do it. Like I have to make sure it's not a night where I'm like to have podcasting stuff. So for me, it's like it is an investment to like go out with you. So no, I'm not gonna like match with you and just be like, hey, yeah, let's go out tonight. I have done in the past, like not say if I truly have a night that's free, that's not, that I'm available and whatever. But I would like a conversation first. I would like to talk for a few days and to know that there is like a vibe or something before I like actually go um, and meet with somebody. But yeah, above all, just trust yourself, right? Find the process that works for you. Find the tool for emotional self-regulation that works for you. Reprogramming your thoughts. This is something I've been doing so much lately. It's like noticing when you're triggered, noticing what's coming up, noticing the story you're telling yourself and questioning that story. Like, do you know for 100% without a doubt that that story is true? Most of the time, like 99% of the time, no, you are viewing a situation from your own wounded lens, right? You're viewing a situation from your own reactions, from your own triggers, from your own pain. And we don't know that this is true. Like maybe your ex, when they said bye in a certain way, it meant that they were pissed, right? So then somebody says that, and you're just going to automatically assign that label to that person. Well, you're mad. What did I do? Or right? Or like we project. Like, do I know for a 100% fact that that's the way that person meant that when they said that? No, right? No, I'm not a mind reader. Nobody is a mind reader. So learning to reprogram those thoughts at a deep belief level is so important, because when we can reprogram our thoughts and we can retrain, even just training our mind to question what's coming up is so helpful. So helpful. So dating and healing after trauma, my experience, because I didn't date multiple people at first. I dated one person, and I do believe I kind of got trauma bonded to that person because it was a safe person. It was a safe person to do my healing with. And so I just like put all of my eggs in one basket with that person, and it hurt. But again, like it hurt because I was being shown where I still needed to heal. All of my wounds were coming up. All of my core beliefs were coming up. And so in hindsight, I'm so grateful for that person, because it was exactly what I needed when I needed it. Yeah, it was exactly what I needed. So go slow, have support, have people that you can talk to, really notice your patterns, right? Have the practice of getting to know yourself in place. Even if you are in the dating process, and you can maybe like take a step back for a minute and just find tools that work for you, get a journal, start putting those in practice, being able to reflect and just understanding like what comes up is what's asking to be seen. What comes up is how you still need to heal. What comes up is just is your core wounds that are surfacing. And how can we communicate that in a way that's healthy? How can we get our needs met in a healthy way? How can we just like identify our patterns? Like I notice now, right? Like when I feel that all familiar for me, it's always this like weight on my chest, it's this constriction. And I'm just like, huh, it's like I close in on myself. When I feel that, I pay attention now. What is this telling me? Is this telling me that this person is not for me? Because sometimes that's just all it is. If you just get that feeling with somebody, you know, maybe they're not for you. And there have been people who are completely kind, completely nice, but I just had that feeling. And so who knows, right? Like nobody's going to show you their dark side in the first time that they meet you, right? And doing the hard thing and trusting yourself. Because there have been people that I, in my past, would have been easy to like fall into relationships with, but I don't think I would have been happy because I don't think I would have gotten what I needed and what I wanted. And so you break those bonds, right? You have to walk away and just, and trusting the universe, trusting God, trusting source, trusting spirit, whatever term you want to use, but trusting, especially in this process of dating, like again, we are humans, we crave connection, we don't want to be alone, we want to have that with another human being. Trusting that your person is also out there looking for you, right? That there is somebody out there for you. And even if it is just multiple experiences, also what a beautiful thing too, right? Um, I don't know that I believe that there is one person for all of us. I did when I was younger. I don't necessarily believe that anymore. But I do believe that you can be accepted and loved for exactly who you are. So begin showing up exactly as you are. Because yes, rejection sucks. Rejection does not feel good. So when I show up as my authentic self and somebody's interested, yes, it stings. But at the end of the day, that person also wasn't going to be for me if they couldn't handle me or didn't like me in the way that I am. And also, again, what is that saying about me? What do I take that to mean about me? What do I need to heal about me? I just did a tapping today with Gala Darling. I'm part of our High Vibes Honey tapping membership. So every Sunday there's a live tapping. And today she was talking about confidence. And she was just talking about being able to live in that space of like, fuck it land, right? Like, I don't care what you have to say about me anymore, right? Because we take on so much to mean so much about us. And it's like, can't we just let it go and say, fuck it? I am who I am. I'm going to live in fuck it land and just be me. Right. And if you want to come and on this journey with me, come on, but you have to accept it all. Right. And also knowing that there is no one person that will fulfill all of your needs. It's not possible. So really redefining like when you are in a relationship, like say you find somebody, because also after all of this, that we talked about, sometimes we can pick at things. We find somebody that's good for us, and then we become scared of the commitment, or we become scared of the vulnerability. We become scared of the emotional vulnerability. So we'll like pick at these little things, right? But yeah, it's just knowing like what we expect. No, I don't like the word expect. What we desire from a partner, what we need from a partner, and then what we can get elsewhere. Because in past relationships for me, I expected my partner just to fix it all, right? If I had a good partner that cared about me and that wanted me, like I was going to be a healed human being. Doesn't work that way. You have to do the work on yourself. And then, 1+1=3. And you can sometimes tell with people when you're talking to them that 1+1=2 or 1+1=1, right? And I have spent so much time in enmeshed and codependent relationships. Now, that's not to say that as I'm dating or as I'm looking at having relationships, I do see a lot of those codependent and enmeshed patterns coming up. But the awareness allows me to identify it, like put a pin in it over here, and then be able to like maybe step back for a minute, assess what's going on, but truly like finding that safe space within you and knowing that you're safe. And if you don't feel safe, leaving that situation early enough, right? Because we are all intuitive. We all know what's going on. We all can sense in our bodies. So I guess in conclusion, like just really coming and finding that space within you that you trust, that you listen to, that you know. So it again just comes straight back to truly getting to know yourself and truly loving yourself. Once that happens, the magic happens. You become magnetic, right? You become magnetic. You can become magic, right? People will see it and people will feel it. And yeah, That has been my journey. That has been my experience. And, sometimes we look at, Ram Dass said, if you think that you're healed, go spend a weekend with your family. Right. And sometimes when I am in that situation, I'm like, oh my God, I am not healed at all. Like all these triggers are coming up, but we also can't look to that for our healing, right? We can't gauge our healing on where our deepest wounds come from for most of us. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. I don't know how long this has been, but I feel like it's been a long, decent long episode. But yeah, that has been my experiences with dating and healing after trauma. If this episode resonates with you, share it with a friend, share it on social media, tag me, let me know what you thought. Let me know what resonated. Let me know, just get me on Instagram at Rochelle.Christiane, ROCHELLE.CHRISTIANE. Let me know what your experiences have been. If there's any tools in here that maybe I didn't mention, or yeah, just come have a conversation. I love hearing from you all, and I thank you all so much. I am also the self doors are officially open. I am taking 5 people through a 7-week small group container, and it is going to be just really so much about connecting with the self, coming back to the self, intention setting, manifestations in there, human design, astrology, attachment styles, food, movement, the physical vessel, right? Like how we can take care of our physical vessel so that we can connect more with the self. So all that information is down in the show notes. You can pay in full. And if this is the very first week, if this is the week of September 19th until the 24th, I'm doing a 30% discount. So you can just like click that link. There's no discount code. It is active until the 24th, Saturday, the 24th, I believe it is. And then it will go back. Prices will go up. But again, 5 people I'm taking through with me, and I am so excited. I'm not even going to lie, a little bit scared, because this is the thing that I have been feeling so called to, but I have kind of not stepped into. And it felt like the time, just divine timing and divine synchronicities and all the things. So for the 5 people that are in this space, our souls already know who we are. So I see you, I feel you, I will speak to you, I will work magic with you in October. And yeah, all the information is down in the show notes. So follow me on Instagram, come find me on Instagram, TikTok at Rochelle.Christiane, Instagram at Rochelle.Christiane, website RochelleChristiane.com. And yeah, if you want to book a coaching session, we can do one-on-one session, single sessions. And the HD 101 workshop is also available. That is just 6 modules, and it's like 2.5 hours, I think, in total. And it just kind of goes over the basics of human design. I am really working on getting more in the shop. I have a human design centers mini workshop coming as well. So if you are not on the email list, I am doing every Monday, Mastery Monday is coming out, and it's just tips, tools, talks about astrology, human design, the body, spirituality, updates on the podcast. So you can get on that newsletter down below. And yeah, I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much for being here and listening. And I love you all.